Let me just tell you, this week in Elmira has been crazy. The Poor People's Campaign started out Tuesday night at our newest location, the Frederick Douglass AME Zion Church at 400 Madison Ave in downtown Elmira. We started out with a meeting to discuss the recently released regional community guidelines. We talked about what the future may hold and felt the passion and excitement from our base. We spent some time highlighting some of the great events that are coming up for the Poor People's Campaign and our associates. Let me just tell you, the calendar is really filling up. October 14th through 16th, we'll see the New York State Poor People's Campaign People's Assembly in Stony Brook, New York. Closer to home on September 11th, Finding Voice, a program sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Steuben County and the Corning East Steuben Library, will feature women in Hebron. Layla Hassan will speak about life as a Palestinian woman living in the West Bank. Next month, they will discuss immigration. September 16th, the Southern Tier Interfaith Coalition, a voice of interfaith harmony and tolerance in Chemung, Steuben, and Schuyler counties, will feature the Poor People's Campaign speakers Suzanne Krull and Jessica Belgrave discussing poverty and racism. Next, we turned our attention to the upcoming elections and the critical dates that come with them. We talked about September 13th, next Thursday. It's primary day in New York. We also marked November 6th as midterm day and vowed to work toward greater voter turnout. A part of this is by knowing that October 12th is a very important date. It is the deadline to mail your voter registration forms in order to be eligible to vote in the upcoming general election. October 12th. Vote like your life depends on it. It just might. Well, that was only the beginning. Next, we turned our attention to the delicious chicken pot pie that was offered by Mothers Helping Mothers, a strong force in our community that is dedicated to embracing and uplifting each other. Once our bellies were full, we turned our attention to filling our minds. Becca provided some basic information about Labor Day, a day set aside to celebrate the many achievements of the American workforce. We learned that the recognition of Labor Day sprung from much of the violence and discord that arose from the end of the 1800s while America was experiencing the Industrial Revolution. The push for a remembrance for the labor struggle started from riots in Chicago in May of 1886 at the Haymarket Square, where workers were fighting for fair work days. In 1887, President Grover Cleveland supported a September remembrance in an effort to step away from the violence involved in the Haymarket Square riots, and we've used that as the unofficial end of summer ever since. Wah, wah. We also talked about Lewis Hine and how he used his camera to be a voice for the voiceless, this time speaking for children who were vulnerable and being exploited by the Industrial Revolution. We touched briefly on the difference between minimum wage and a living wage, the impact of big corporations and their impact on the social safety net, and how mass incarceration fits into the picture as well. So many factors working together to oppress the poor. How do we overcome these factors? We unite. We illustrated this point through the use of a game, the Skittles game, an activity developed by the United Way of Dane County. We use Brightside Skittles and a deck of action cards that demonstrate some of the hardships faced by the poor. Players were faced with scenarios where they gain Skittles for things like finishing a CNA course that allows you to get a better job, or lose Skittles for things like having an apartment fire and losing everything with no insurance to cover the loss. The two ways out of the game are by either losing all of your Skittles and going to the poorhouse, or finding a 211 card and getting connected with local resources that will help you out. It was a fun and great way to drive some fun conversation. Wrapping up the evening were Brian Batroni, a local field organizer, and Dora Leland, a unionist with the State Teachers Union. They helped us to understand the position of unions in the current system and the need for support in education. We look forward to inviting them back to give us a more in-depth look at the state of labor and employment. But if that wasn't enough, the week's activities were just starting. On September 8th, the Poor People's Campaign joined several other local organizations to recognize the Rise for Climate, a global event that spans 7 continents and 95 countries, with more than 900 activities scheduled to cry out to our local leaders to make change for real climate action today. Our festivities started started at 8:15 when we met at Fitch's Bridge for the Flotilla for Climate Change. Kayaks and canoes floating down several scenic miles of the Chemung River. We had a great guide who was able to give us history and the background on the river, the activities that made it such an important commodity to our area, and tips to keep us safe and happy while we enjoy this precious natural resource. Next, we were met at the Grove Street boat launch by the Rise and Cheer the Flotilla crowd. So many people showed up to make their voices heard while begging Governor Cuomo to move away from fossil fuels. The big rally came next. The Rise for Climate was held at Wisner Park. Rise for Climate Chemung County was co-sponsored by Mothers Out Front, New York Southern Tier, NIPAN of the Southern Finger Lakes, Citizens for a Better Southern Tier, People for a Healthy Environment, and the Poor People's Campaign in Elmira. So many groups came together for such an important event. We had local speakers talking about their experiences with climate change and how the invisible webs of oppression interlock in this domain as well. We were urged to get involved and participate. The whole community came out to support us. It was a great experience. We're looking forward to the next Teaching Tuesday on September 18th, where we're going to talk about voter registration. There is likely going to be an opportunity to canvass and help boost voter registration too. Bring your empty belly and open mind to Frederick Douglass AME Zion Church, 400 Madison Avenue in Elmira at 6 p.m. October 2nd, we'll be back to talk about voting rights. More programs to come covering topics that impact the poor. Join us to learn about the intersections that affect this nation and see why we are the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for a moral revival. We move forward together and not one step back.